Alrighty, welcome to the Excitable Soul podcast. Here we are interested in all things purpose. We want to know where and how people find meaning and connection in their lives. In every episode, we're going to be hearing the real life stories of how people have uncovered, understood, and unleashed their own unique sense of purpose. Our hope is that we can all learn from the stories and the journeys of our guests so that we can better find a sense of purpose in our own lives. I'm host James Glover, performance coach and purpose nerd. I'm incredibly excited to be exploring these stories with you. So let's get going, shall we? Hey, everybody. Today's guest is Gary Steeples, self-confessed communication skills nerd. He describes himself as a failed sports scientist who fell out of university into a well-paying job with a cool company car. His early professional life focused on a variety of commercial roles in pharmaceutical and biotech companies, where he experienced firsthand the power of effective communication and the harm done by dysfunctional communication. In 2019, following a personal Jerry Maguire moment of clarity, he founded his own small consultancy with the sole purpose of helping people have more successful interactions with their fellow humans. For the last 8 years, he has been coaching junior hockey players, having had a deep passion for the sport and understanding the powerful role that it can play in the development of young people. This conversation took an unexpected twist, which Gary and I both wanted to make sure that you were all a part of. Enjoy. Gary, welcome to the Excitable Soul podcast. Amazing, mate. Absolutely amazing to have you here. And thank you so much for agreeing to come and have a conversation with me. How are you feeling today?
Well, it's my absolute pleasure to be here. It's always a pleasure to chat with you. I'm excited, slightly anxious, and I know we're going to have to keep a lid on what could turn into an echo chamber of positivity today, judging by our normal interactions. But no, it's great. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think our listeners should be aware of the kind of the sonic boom of energy that may take place actually during this conversation. Like it's kind of overwhelming for our friends and family when we're in the same place at the same time. So let's just hope that the platform that we're recording on can take it too.
Definitely. Great.
So hopefully by now, kind of our listeners and our guests are starting to get a sense of who we are and kind of how we operate on this podcast, where we're really interested in people telling their stories of purpose. And that is to say, where they find meaning and they find connection in their lives and what's the kind of the unique contribution they're trying to bring to the world. And in order to be able to do that, we ask some big questions, like some haymakers always. And often the kind of the start point in our journey is just to ask people to kind of reflect back on the experiences and the moments that have shaped who they are, because ultimately purpose is within us. It's a kind of journey of discovery rather than one of invention. And so, for you, Gary, what are some of the key moments you think when you look back over your journey to date that have really shaped who you are?
Wow, we're starting out big, aren't we? Okay. There have been moments, mostly people actually, that I have met in my life that have made me take a serious introspective look at me.
Yeah.
And in those moments, I've found some things that were uncomfortable, but ultimately revealing.
Yeah.
I think my early years, most of us could probably say this, my early years, my young years were mostly about just trying to decide who am I, what do I like doing, and just interacting with the world in a way that was kind of unfiltered, really.
Yeah.
I know we met very young. We met probably, I think I was 13, you were maybe 11, I'm
Yeah.
guessing, down at the Beeston Hockey Club. And I think at that age, you're just who you are, right? You're going through life, just doing what you do, being who you are. And I got to a point in my late teens, went to university, and I realized things just weren't really clicking for me. I'd found myself at university doing a sports science degree. I discovered I did not have a love of learning at that point. That was something that came to me much later in life. And I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know where I was going to go and what the future held for me. And I ended up falling into a job in the pharmaceutical industry. So I fell out of university, just about scraped my sports science degree, and fell into a job working as a pharmaceutical salesperson, which had lots of appeal because it came with money and status. I fell out of university into a company, BMW, and at 21, 22 years old, you think you're the man.
That's it. You've made it. Done.
Right? Yeah. And I thought, this is it. These are the important things in life: is to make some money and have some status and make your mark on the world. Um, and then it didn't take an awfully long time for me to realize that I maybe wasn't making the dent in the universe that I wanted to.
Yeah.
And that's when I really started thinking hard about, well, is this for me? Is this really what I was meant to be doing with my life?
What were some of the things that you started to notice and pay attention to? Because I love that language. I'm not making the dent in the world that I want to. That, there's such expression in the words that you're even choosing there, which is a sense of I'm capable of more. I want to be able to do more, and it's not just about me. It's about the world. So what were some of the things that you were experiencing and paying attention to that started to provoke you in that? What does the Gary shaped dent look like in the world?
Yeah, and I didn't know what that dent needed to look like, but I just knew I wasn't making one at all. And
Yeah.
I noticed because um, I don't know if for our listeners, the role of a pharmaceutical salesperson is to go and see physicians. You go and see them and talk about a particular medication. You tell them all about the details of that medication, the advantages and the features, and what it could mean for patients, all the clinical data, in the hope that they will then use that medication to help their patients. And I just got a sense in those interactions that nothing was really changing. They were being very nice to me. I was having some very nice chats,
Yeah.
um, but it wasn't really affecting the way that they were practicing medicine. So it sounds very much like I was being a relatively ineffective pharmaceutical salesperson. And I
So,
think probably at times that is absolutely true. It just wasn't for me having enough of a positive effect on the lives of other people.
why why in those moments, in those interactions, did you feel like it was about the impact on the lives of other people that was important?
Well, see, you're talking to physicians about sick people, people with diseases and conditions that have a significant limiting effect on their life, and sometimes result, of course, in death as well. And those medications should be able to help those people. And yeah, I just got a sense that I wasn't able to make a big enough effect on ultimately the lives of those people through chatting to physicians. They were making their own minds up in what they were doing, probably not based on what I was telling them. And I remember one time I went to see a physician, and I was telling him all about this wonderful CD-ROM. You remember CD-ROMs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
CDs in your computer, and it had these video demonstrations of how to do joint injection, which is for a way to treat patients with arthritis. They can help to relieve the symptoms of pain they have and
Yeah.
inflammation in their joints. And it was a tutorial DVD. And I said, "There you go, doctor. There's this DVD-ROM." And he said, "Oh yeah, very good." And he reached into his drawer in his desk, and he took out a copy of the Argos catalogue, put it on the desk, slid it over to me, and there was a page marked in it with a post-it note with he said, Sanyo CD player, 69.99. I said, "Oh no, it goes in your computer CD drive." He says, "Yeah, but Sanyo CD player, 69.99. I said, "Oh no." So no, we can't sponsor things like that for your practice. And I got a sense at that moment. It was a real moment of clarity for me that um, many physicians did not see the relationship
Yeah.
that I had with them as an informative, educational, helpful relationship. This
Yeah.
was something else right here, and that's not what the pharmaceutical industry do, and that's
Yeah.
certainly not what I wanted to do. And I thought, wow, is that all I am?
Yeah.
I'm more than this. I need to have a really good think about what I want to do now with the rest of my
Because
life.
there's that, and I'm making an assumption here, and I just want to kind of check this with you. But like that interaction isn't just speaking about what you do, or it's not just challenging and creating tension in what you do. It's creating challenge and tension in who you are as
Oh, big
well.
time.
So,
Yeah,
when you're looking across the desk at somebody who is a medical professional, and you're believing you're having a certain type of interaction, and you're valuing that interaction in a certain way, and they whip out an Argos catalog, and it just changes the value exchange completely, doesn't it? It's an entirely different dynamic that's created. And I can imagine the challenge to your values in that moment of, hold on a second, I'm here
yeah.
with the intent of being able to help people, and you're here with the intent of being able to get some free stuff.
Yeah, yeah, and that is not the relationship. It never intended to be that, and it was a huge values breach for me.
Yeah,
And yeah, it got me thinking more carefully at that point. It was one of those moments. It was the Jerry Maguire moment.
yeah,
It was the conference on Miami. It was the maybe I don't like my place in the world. Am I just another shark in a suit?
yeah.
I need to think more carefully about this. And it started an introspective process that led me somewhere else.
Yeah, and you know what? I love the fact that you've just kind of drawn attention to Jerry Maguire, first movie quote of the conversation today, and I know there'll be many. But the fact that, if you just think about that moment for him, where he describes, but you visually see him in this kind of almost deep sweat of like
Yeah.
anxiety, because it's an existential crisis in its own right. Of, I've been doing this, and I've been doing this successfully, and is it right? What does that look like? And so, right at the beginning, when I asked you the moments that have really shaped who you are, and you talked to about there are people that have created a level of introspection and reflection that was uncomfortable. I guess what you're sharing here is the first provocation of that, the first trigger of that for you. Well, I'm not saying necessarily first in terms of timeline, but a really significant one in that moment. What did you do with it, Gary? Like what did that trigger lead to? What is the introspective process for you? Because if I'm a listener, I'm going, yeah, I've kind of felt some of that stuff, but then how do you take that experience and turn it into something that then becomes different?
Yeah. I was very fortunate in that role that I had a coach. And as a young man, young professional, 21, 22 years old, to have somebody coaching you, provided by the company, is rare. Even now,
Yeah,
20 years later, that is rare in an organization. That coaching kind of resource is normally reserved for those people in the upper echelons of an organization.
yeah,
Although I know it has and is still changing for the good. Um, and I was fortunate enough to be coached by a man called Mike Enright. This guy had been in the pharmaceutical industry nearly all of his career. He'd been the top guy at Boots. He was a sales rep when they launched ibuprofen. Okay, that's how long ago it was when he was a sales rep. But
wow,
he was, yeah, I know. Lived in Nottingham, so he's a local guy, and he had been the sales director for Boots nationally in the UK. So
mm,
really senior guy. But he had found his way later in life, towards the end of his career, towards being a performance coach. And he performance coached me. And I told him that story. And I shared with him my discomfort and this process of introspection I was going through. And that clearly I wasn't being effective. And that my relationship was being perceived with these healthcare professionals as not being valuable enough in its own right. And he coached me, and I went through this brilliant process of understanding more about my responsibility for what that relationship with my customers, with healthcare professionals, looked like. I had a huge role to play in how it had ended up in that state.
yeah.
And he asked some amazing questions, right? Like the best coaches do. And he listened intently, and yeah, he facilitated me going through that change.
So, I'm kind of curious because there's some, I think, really important language you're using here, which was being valuable enough. Like I wasn't valuable enough, or I didn't believe I was valuable enough. But also this kind of sense of responsibility for that ending up, the relationship ending up where it did. Like what? How do you understand your sense of value now, and maybe this kind of isn't a sequential timeline conversation, kind of
Mm.
feel free to dance around and kind of and connect the dots in different ways. But yeah, how do you understand what being valuable really means to you now?
It does directly link to that moment, to that time, and for me now it is very clear. So 15, 20 years later, and it's my value to the world to me is crystal clear. It's about helping people to have better, more effective, more satisfying, successful interactions with other human beings, and the world is super short on that.
Yeah,
I think it is in more need of more of that than it has ever been before. And so there's a great need for it. And it turns out I'm actually quite good at it as well.
yeah,
And so that's always a winner, right? And it came from a personal journey of discovery. And so I've walked the path
yeah,
towards understanding how to do that,
yeah.
and I now spend my time and my energy helping other people to do that too, and it's just the best thing in the world.
So talk to us about the journey of discovery, Gary. Like what was that? What was the path?
Well, so Mike, the guy I was telling you about, my coach, he used to do this brilliant thing where he'd bring a banana with him on our coaching days. Okay, and he'd always bring a single banana, and he would use it as a coaching tool. Okay, bear with me, right? Right?
Okay, I'm in.
Yeah.
I'm in.
Okay.
Whatever it is, I'm in.
Pause for effect, build attention. so, and so the reason it was a banana, I found out later, many years later, is because he was a war baby, and he said when he was growing up in London, he said we couldn't get bananas. You couldn't get bananas in the years following the war because of rationing. So he says, whenever I can get hold of a banana to eat, I always have a banana. So he always full of stories, amazing. But he used to use this banana. He'd say, right, Gary, let's have a conversation about what just happened in that conversation with that healthcare professional. And he'd ask a question, and then he'd let me answer. And as he was doing it, he'd be slowly peeling the banana, and then he'd let me answer. And then as I'd finished my answer, he would take a bite of the banana, so that was my cue to know that he was still not going to talk. And there would be this uncomfortable silence while he finished his mouthful of banana. And I, of course, would crack first, and
Yeah,
I would
yeah.
keep talking. And all the stuff that I said after he took the bite of banana was all the great stuff. It was the real stuff behind the initial answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was genius. I didn't understand it until years later. And then at the
Man,
end
I
of the
love
day,
that.
he good, right?
Love
Yeah.
that. I mean, there's definitely an awkwardness in it for sure. I thought you were about to describe a bit of a Me Too moment. I was going to say, "Are you okay, Gary?" but the but the but the simplicity of that, like the you talk about the significance of human interaction and the kind of the place that you want to make a contribution in the world and how you do that. And in one simple story, you are kind of unpicking so many different dynamics in human connection. It's unreal, isn't it? Like there's a sense of intrigue in why has this guy brought a piece of fruit to this conversation? Does he know? Is this serious or not? And then you share what you think is the kind of the right thing to reply, and you realize in that moment, heart drop, stomach churn moment. Oh, I have to talk more. I have to
Yeah.
say more. There needs to be more here. It's still on me. What does that look like? And actually, this guy's just really enjoying a banana in the moment, and you struggle. And actually, it's in the kind of the tension, it's in the discomfort that you then start to come to the realizations that are actually useful and powerful for you.
Yeah, 100%. And there were two things there for me. The first thing is this guy was a master communicator.
Hmm.
This was intentional, it was deliberate, it was skilled. And he was the first person I had ever met where I had an appreciation of the power of skilled, intentional communication
Yeah.
and what that could do for other people. So, first role model in that respect. And secondly, because of that level of skill, it helped me to understand me better.
Mm.
So I was experiencing myself a personal journey of discovery that that helped me to become not just a better salesperson by incremental steps, which was another thing you introduced me to, but also just to become a better person. I
Yeah.
liked the me that I was becoming through being more self aware, by being more intentional about the way I behaved, thinking carefully about the effect that was having on other people. And that in turn gave me a greater sense of control because the world's a scary place, right? All these things happen.
Yeah.
And often it can feel like we're out of control and we're at the mercy of fate. And how is it that that person is so successful and this person gets that thing and I don't get it?
Yeah.
When we really start to look closely, he helped me to see that I have more control over that than maybe I had thought.
Yeah.
If I just pay attention to it, it's not a long way from where I am to where I might like to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love this. There are just kind of multiple things playing out here for me, and I can't kind of get it out of my head yet. The way that you were just really eloquently able to describe kind of a sense of purpose here. This is, this desire to increase the quality of human interaction. That isn't about the role that you play in your life as a professional person. It wasn't then, and it's not now, because it's transcended the role that you played. You're not a salesperson anymore. You successfully run and own your own business. So it's deeper than that. It's beyond that. And it's also not defined by other roles that you play in your life in terms of parent and partner. You can express that sense of purpose through both of those things. But this idea that you were able to turn around and go, okay, I have a sense of who I can become here, and it's actually within my gift. And it's not as far away as I think it might be because it is within my gift to be able to
Yeah.
go after it. What the bit that I'm not sure that we've answered yet, and I kind of want to stay with it, is this kind of idea of being valuable enough and that kind of idea and sense of self-worth element, because um, or the fact that you were able to go from immediately me asking you that question to boom, sense of like there's a sense of purpose here. How does that help you now define your sense of self-worth? What does that look like for you now?
Wow. Because I lost my way for a while. Let me tell you how I ended up where I am now. I'll answer that question by telling you a little more about the journey. I lost my way for a while with that sense of purpose. I found it and then I walked away from it and I went off to do other things that involved status and money and all those things that I should have known were not really going
Yeah,
to help me make my dent in the universe. But I think that's true for so many people. But it was a great learning experience for me. But it helped me to refocus on what really matters to me and what my sense of purpose is. Sometimes getting lost is the best way to get found,
yeah,
and that was so true for me. And I found my way back to it a few years ago, and I'm now able to say no to things. It's one of the greatest gifts I have from being clear on my purpose is being comfortable and confident to say thank you, but no. I had an opportunity last year to take on a massive new client with my business, which would have been, I mean, a game changer for the business. Huge contract, running a kind of global training for a big company, and my business partner and I we turned it down because we had a really good conversation about well, does this is what we're all about. This
yeah,
is who we are. This is what we do, and what we are we being true to ourselves here, or are we chasing the status and the money? And
yeah,
it was the latter. And we said thank you, but no, it's not for us. And what that does is be able to say no creates that time. It creates a space. It creates a surplus of energy to be able to direct into the things that really matter to us.
yeah,
So we've stayed small, but we stayed happy and we've stayed true to our purpose. And it's just, I'm so glad we said no to it. We'd be in a very different place right now.
yeah.
I don't know if that answers your question or not, but it's certainly been an important reminder
Well,
for
I
me in the
think
last year.
I think there's a yes and in there, Gary. Actually, I think that the bit that's really kind of captured my attention and that I'm curious about was the kind of the tension and the wrestle within you. So fell out of university into a job, beamer and money and status. Let's rock and roll. Right. Okay. This isn't maybe quite what I want in my life, and maybe there's some stuff that's missing here. Help, there's some help in there that started to be able to kind of shape a different perspective you and a different level of insight for you, and it was starting to be able to help you say, actually, well, what is the kind of the unique contribution that I'm trying to bring to the world and the impact that I want that contribution to have. But then you consciously walked away from it again, and
Yeah.
saying there was definitely there was a draw to the money and the status thing again. And I was a bit lost. I was a bit in the wilderness. And actually, right now, I can sit here from a position of pride and be able to say that was tested again. And I was able to make a different choice. And I'm able to feel differently about who I am and who this organization is because I made a different choice this time. I was able to say no. What was it in that moment of kind of getting lost that has helped you find that sense of clarity around saying no? And how do you stand behind saying no now when there is a tension, there is a draw there?
Mm. It felt like a mistake when I got lost, when I moved from a role in my career that was satisfying all of those wonderful things that really fitted beautifully with my purpose. I moved into a more commercial role, and it was the environment I was working and living in was one that rewarded and recognized status within an organization. And I thought, oh, I need some more of that. And I think that was it was a in retrospect, that's a real warning sign for me now. If I start to feel myself being affected by, and my decision making affected by the external environment,
Yes.
it's a warning for me. It's like, okay, that's interesting. How does that fit with the inside stuff,
Yeah,
identity,
nice.
values, all those things that really matter to me? Back then, not equipped to be able to notice that.
Yeah.
Um, I had kids though. I say Georgie and I had kids. Isabel came along, and I always knew I wanted to be a parent. I always knew I would enjoy it and it would be important to me. And I took a decision. I was in a marketing role, very high pressured, very important within the organization. And I made a request to work a 4-day week every other week. I used all my annual leave to work a 4-day week so I could spend time with my daughter when she was a baby. And it was frowned upon. The organisation let it happen, but it wasn't met with open arms. But I loved it so much, and I would never ever take it back. And it reminded me what my values were. It reminded me about the joy of doing things that really matter to you. And that one day every fortnight was so much more satisfying than the kind of the other days when I was
Yeah.
doing the other stuff. And I thought there's more to life here.
Yeah.
There's more to life than just chasing this money and status. And again, it was a bit of a wake up call for me. And I know that my wife went through a similar experience at a similar time. And I know these life events can often do that for people. And it's a time to pause and breathe and just have that introspective look.
what
So
what
that was what
need
happened for
in
me.
you was the kind of the status thing satisfying, do you think?
um, it has to go back to parents, right? It always goes back to mum and dad, right? I
Blame the
mean,
parents straight away.
we're,
Yep.
I mean, so on a daily basis, we mess up our kids in innumerable ways. That's what we do as parents, right? And my parents did the same for me. That was the gift they gave me. Um, I think that the world, though, actually, aside from parents, the world overtly recognizes um, status, and there's so much of it these days. People
Yeah.
are judged on how much wealth they accumulate and what status they have in the world. if you ask most people how successful they are, they will reply with telling you what they do for a job and what role they hold within an organization and
Yeah.
how much money they have and where their second home is on the
Yeah.
cost of that
Financial
soul.
terms for
Right?
sure. Yeah.
Financial terms, status terms. And I'm not saying that's wrong, but it's a very one-dimensional way of looking at success.
Yes.
Um, Success to whom? Oh, they're very successful. Successful how? As according
Yeah.
to their goals? Great, I'm happy for them. But that's not my success. My
Mm.
success looks very different. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, there are many, many different ways of looking at what success is. And that having children reminded me that there are more important ways to be successful than the money and the status.
Yeah.
And far more meaningful for me personally.
Yeah, and I love that shift, Gary. You know, we talk about going from kind of uncovering a sense of purpose into really understanding it. And there are a couple of things in what you're sharing there that kind of land strongly with me. The first is the kind of the tension and the wrestle between status and kind of fulfillment, and the fact that you fell off the wagon, which is a totally human experience. But actually, the fall, what did the fall off the wagon enable? Well, it enabled you to realize that when I feel a tension, when I feel a pull, that's a warning sign. I need to
Mm.
be paying attention to different information than I was paying attention to before. And so that's now become a really powerful weapon in your armory of awareness to go, okay, I'm feeling some stuff and I acknowledge and recognize this feeling and where it's coming from. And there are some different criteria I set about the decisions that I'm making, which come from the inside out. So what does success really mean and look like now? I had this idea that was maybe formulated by a number of different influences, whether they were family influences, whether they're societal influences. But now, actually, the thing that influences success and how I define it comes from the inside out. There are things that you use that word fulfillment. Like that's a really easy word to say out loud, and it's a really difficult journey to find a connection to. But you made a hard choice. I'm going to do something in this organization that makes me an outlier, which is always painful, could have an impact on how I'm seen and therefore how I progress.
Yeah.
Ooh, status could get chopped down here. But I really want to do this and it's really important to me. And lo and behold, you stand behind that, and it gives you a sense of something that the other thing could never have achieved. And now it becomes, well, that's now the bar, not the other thing.
That word you used or repeated back was attention as well.
Yeah.
And that's something I've learned over the years. It has really made a difference to me. It's about what you pay attention to. And because the world just competes for our attention these
Yeah.
days. I mean, I know I use the example of social media just because it is one of the greatest sources of that tries to grab our attention.
Yeah.
And if we just pay attention to what the world is trying to direct us towards, we miss so much. And I'm more intentional now about what I pay attention to, because
Yeah.
we know when you pay attention to something, it grows in importance. And when it grows in importance, it becomes causal, and you get these upward spirals and wonderful things happen. And yeah, all that good stuff that happens when you're more intentional.
And I think that kind of seamlessly moves us into the kind of the third step here in the journey, really around kind of almost being able to unleash a sense of purpose. And uh, for me, the kind of the significance of this, and I was challenged actually by one of the other guests on this podcast about what those words, what that language kind of conjured in them, and there was kind of almost a bit of an immune reaction, and it was brilliant because it made me go, well, what do I mean when I talk about a leap of faith? What am I really talking about? Um, and it's about the kind of the moments of excitement and courage. There's energy behind something. It feels like there's unknown, but there's possibility that sits within it. Um, and I'm wondering where those moments have come from for you, and or where you can see them on the horizon.
Oh, okay. Um, well, a big leap of faith for me was 5 years ago, was starting my own business. You've already alluded to it. I was at the time working for a global training agency doing capability development programs for big companies, mostly pharmaceutical companies. And it was a mixture of things, mixture of communication skills and kind of marketing skills and lots of other things, leadership things. There were certain things that I absolutely loved to do, and I was really good at them. And there were other things not quite so much. And I found myself being pulled more and more towards the things I didn't enjoy so much and maybe weren't my sweet spot. And I decided it was time to go and give it a go on my own, start my own small consultancy, doing the things that were my sweet spot. And I had huge amounts of imposter syndrome. Um, it's like, am I good enough? Am I credible enough? And one of the things that I learned was that when you do things that you are really passionate about and that you know something about a value where you can share some ideas that can really help people, you do not have to be as good as you think you need to be successful and to make a dent in the universe.
Yeah.
And I'm very fortunate that my clients have met me with nothing but positivity and support because I've managed to bring value. And it's because I've managed to find the thing that I love to do, I care about deeply. I've got some capability around it. I can share some ideas that make a difference for people. And I would say to anybody who is thinking about making a leap of faith, you're already better than you think you are. If it's all truly lined up for you, if you're doing things, if you're going to behave in ways that fit with your skills, with your values and your beliefs and your identity, when all those things line up, you can do some magical things and you are already better than most people out there who might be
Yeah.
offering something similar. So just go for it.
Uh, and as somebody who, like, personally um, wrestles with that exact decision and that exact choice, and it's really wonderful to kind of hear you say that with the level of conviction that you do. But translate it for me, like, take me through the kind of the inner turmoil to get to the kind of the outcome, the bits that you had to really overcome to get there, or you didn't, you just went, well, I don't know, I'm not going to know, so screw it, let's let's just jump off the cliff. Like, what was the kind of the conviction experience for you that enabled all of that?
I had the support of people. I had people around me who would reinforce the belief that you can do this,
Yeah.
and they would remind me of the proof of that. So this wasn't just blind faith. This
Yeah.
was, concrete examples of times when I had done the thing that I wanted to go and do independently, and had done it successfully for people. Um, Even with that, there's still that sense of a fear about taking that leap. And you can look at the face of it and you think, wow, where am I possibly going to find an opportunity to make this work? Where am I going to fit into this gap in the marketplace, for example? But there's one thing that well, not one thing, there are many things that sport has taught me. You and I played hockey together for years, and occasionally we still do when you find some time to make it onto a hockey field, which I'm thoroughly intend for us to do soon. One of the things I learned from playing hockey is that you can look at a hockey field or any team sport for that matter. If you have the ball in a position and you look up, you're trying to find a pass to a teammate, and there is no pass on, there is just no opportunity. All you need to do is move the ball a meter, and everything changes. Everything changes. All of a sudden, gaps have opened up everywhere. So you just got to start. You just got to take a step and everything changes. And I coach the kids that on a Sunday morning down at Beeston Hockey Club. I'm passionate about coaching the kids there. And it's wonderful to see the change in their belief about what is possible from that
Yeah.
static position. They move the ball a meter and it all changes. And you see them have these light bulb moments. And I hope they carry that over into the rest of their life. And it's something I saw in my leap of faith was just take a step, just
Yeah.
start. And it's amazing what opens up.
And just you even describing that, Gary. Like the feeling I'm having is one of kind of lightness. Like it feels like possibility. It feels, and that's because it feels true. Like if you stand in any perspective, if you have any worldview and you take a step to the left or to the right, you notice and see different things. And just that kind of principle or idea of you only know what you know in the position that you are in, because you're only getting the information that's coming in that moment. So change the position, you'll get different information.
Yeah,
And then what might be
absolutely.
possible?
Absolutely. And I'm really big on horizons, on this
Yeah.
idea of broadening your horizons. I say to the kids all the time, to my children, it's like, broaden your horizons. And Georgie and I will work to try and give them different experiences because, as you say, different experience, different information, different insights, different opportunities. You just see what more things could be possible. And I think for any of us, if we could do that for other people, in however that might look, is a wonderful gift to give to the world. Um, yeah, it's great.
So, so Gary, this is just, really, this is kind of out of the coaching playbook 101. If you could go back, if you could go back to Gary Steeples, who was falling out of university and into the first BMW, or to Gary Steeples, who had just kind of had this interaction with this medical professional and felt deeply challenged, or Gary Steeples, who fell off the wagon a little bit further down the track, what are the things that you would be saying to that person now and today?
I would say it's okay not to know. Um, it's okay not to know the answers. I know back then I thought successful people had all the answers. They knew everything. And I behaved in that way. I remember vividly. Thinking that you walk into a room, you need to know stuff. You need to be the most interesting person and you need to have all the answers if you're going to be of value. And I know now, many years later, that's just not true. Feel comfortable not to know. Feel comfortable to be openly vulnerable about the fact that you don't know. And in fact, counter to how it might feel at the time, you just better things will happen. You will be more interesting by not knowing the answer and maybe just having a few more questions. And it comes on to things like growth mindset and fixed mindset. Being for it to be okay not to know the answer is one of the fundamentals of a growth mindset, right? And
Yeah.
and I know I didn't have that, and I wish I had had it more at the time.
Yeah, and I think, Gary, just there's just something really wonderful here that can kind of almost help us kind of close the circle on this conversation, which is, you use this language about being valuable enough, and then you just again use that same language of being of value in those kind of interactions, and almost your journey of kind of awakening around, well, what does value really mean, and how do I define it, where does it come from, and what's the contribution that I make towards it. And that kind of willingness just to be open, far more open to, actually, who knows, I don't, what my journey has taught me is I don't always know, but the more I stay open to the world around me, to the people around me, the chances are I'm going to kind of figure out what's right for me. And the fact that all of that has led you to this place where actually the impact that I want to have in the world is about the interactions that people have with each other. And the more that people can see the importance and the significance of how we come together and the way we treat one another as being the unit of value for us as human beings, because we are social creatures. Like that's a magical contribution to make in terms of the Gary Steeples dent that is left on the world, when your time here is done, my friend.
Yeah, well, I hope so, because it really is the basis for so much joy in life, and I see so much dysfunction in communication and interpersonal relationships, and that there's just such a huge opportunity to help people to extract more joy from life, in whatever that looks like, just by being better communicators and understanding maybe a bit more about why they communicate the way they do with each other, and that it feels noble to me. And I love to do it. And as you said before, not just professionally, but socially with friends and family and with the kids at the hockey club. It's a total joy to do.
Yeah. Well, I can personally attest to the quality of experience, given that we've known each other for 30 plus years. Yeah, there are some stories that would probably shame us both that shouldn't be captured to be used against us by our children at some point. Um,
Yeah, certainly not podcast worthy.
yeah, exactly. Gary, thank you so much for being with us on the Excitable Soul podcast today. Just wonderful to have you and for you to be able to share those stories and those insights. Thank you so much.
Well, it's been my pleasure. Thanks so much, James.
Pleasure. So, I'm not even sure how this is going to work yet, ladies and gentlemen. Gary and I are figuring it out together, which is we come to a natural conclusion in our conversation before, or what felt like a natural conclusion. But the second that we stopped recording, we started talking, and we started to talk about some stuff that just felt really important in understanding the deeper levels of Gary's journey and actually what drives the commitment to the purpose that he now experiences. And in this conversation, I'm, massively upset with myself for A, not asking the right question to bring it forward in the conversation, and B, pressing record while he's sharing this insight. So Gary's taken a leap of faith and he's allowed me to press record. And we're just going to go back a little step here. And Gary, I'm not even sure of kind of what the right question for me to ask is in terms of the entry point, but what I really heard you talking about was the why of the why. Like, what is it that you experienced that really creates the drive in you to focus on communication and relationships?
That's a good question. It goes back to childhood, and I shared with you that I had a very strained relationship with my dad, and we're very different people, very different ways of communicating. But I didn't understand that as a child. It was only later in life when I learned a few fundamental things about psychology and about personality preferences that I discovered that, in fact, there's a reason for it. But growing up, it always felt like my dad and I just saw the world very differently. We speak a different language.
Yeah.
My dad's very focused on correctness and on technicalities and on task. I'm very focused on people. I'm all about people's feelings and about possibility and not about the stuff my dad focuses on. And it always felt like we were talking at cross purposes,
Yeah.
to the point where it felt like we didn't like each other,
Yeah.
and that's a really big thing for me as a young man growing up. It was also the same could be said about the relationship my mum had with my dad. They had and have a very different style of communication. And I'd just gone to university, freshers week, 3 or 4 days in, I get a phone call from home. The days before mobile phones, so it was the phone booth in the halls of residence,
Yeah.
and the word went out, oh, there's a phone call for Gary. So I made my way downstairs to the phone booth and took a call from my mum to say, I'm thinking of leaving your dad. How do you feel about us separating? It's a big call, right?
Yeah. Massive.
And I said, if it's right for you, if it's right for the two of you, then yes, you have my blessing to do that. I mean, God love my mum for even asking.
Yeah.
What a call to make, right, as a parent. But they clearly had waited until I'd gone to university. They had
Yeah.
made it work. They had been resilient, toughed it out to the point where I'd gone away to university. My sister had already gone.
Yeah.
But it showed that there was so much joy had been missed in their
Yeah.
relationship, and so much joy of life had been missed in my relationship with my dad
Yeah.
that could have been solved with a better understanding of people, of fundamentals of psychology and of communication skills and preferences. And it's only later on in life when I fell into the world of communication skills, and I learned about Carl Jung's psychology and insights discovery and MBTI,
Yeah.
psychometric testing, that I discovered that my father is diametrically opposed to me and my mother in terms of his personality preferences. And I could see there was a reason for it. It's not right or wrong, it's just different.
Yeah.
And then with that basic understanding, you're able to figure out strategies for how to communicate better with each other. I think without that understanding, my dad and I would not have a relationship right now.
Yeah.
But we do. We find a way to have a good functioning relationship, but it involves both of us taking steps further towards each other in the way we communicate. And
Yeah.
we're able to successfully do that now. But that's the drive for me, is that if that's just my experience, there are people all around the world having those types of experiences with their family, with their friends, with their loved ones and their colleagues, with their customers. And there's so much joy that is being missed out on in the world that could be fixed, that could be accessed with just some simple communication skills and a bit better understanding of why it is.
And the thing that's kind of hit me square in the heart, Gary, is when you talked about, my dad and I didn't seem to really like each other, but actually the kind of the understanding that you've got around how we come together and how we communicate with one another it's got nothing to do with me as a person. It's got nothing to do with him as a person. It's not
Yeah.
about good or bad people. It's about, I see the world and understand it this way, and you see the world and understand it that way. And the more I can try and see it from your perspective, the more that we can create a connection, and vice versa.
So it's a great summary. I love you and hate you in equal measure for encouraging me to share this story, but it's an important story, it's an important story for me personally. But I think it could also be an important story for lots of people, because
Yeah.
I know this exists elsewhere in the world.
And ladies and gentlemen, I hope that that you can see the kind of the humility in both Gary and I, in that we were in a conversation and in the moment, and actually sometimes it takes time for the kind of the really emotive elements to kind of come to the fore. And Gary, I've just incredibly grateful for you being willing to kind of just come back in and go, you know what, this is the why of the why. This is what really creates the emotive connection to the purpose that I have in the world, and why I want to make the impact that I want to make. It's because I experience some stuff that other people don't have to experience. So I can see opportunity and possibility for joy that might be missed. And people are to some degree suffering, and they don't need to. And that, my friend, is just an incredible mission to be on in your life. So thank you. And in order to just bring another movie reference, this is our Marvel moment, right? This is us doing the post credits bit.
Is this the credit scene?
Yeah.
Well, I think the lesson for both of us is, if you're going to ask really great coaching questions, always bring a banana.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you, my man.
Thanks, James.
Massive thank you for taking the time to listen to the Excitable Soul podcast. If you are interested in uncovering, understanding, and unleashing your sense of purpose, come and explore our purpose immersion programs at theexcitablesoul.com. We look forward to hearing from you there, or being with you on our next episode. Have an incredible day.